At my birthday party, I planned to announce my pregnancy. Instead, my boyfriend handed me a gift box. Inside was a note that read, "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better." Everyone laughed as he walked away. Our friends looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I just smiled because he didn't know what I can do. 2 months later, he was drunk in front of my house, screaming my name. I had been with Daniel for just over 3 years. He was charming and attentive, actually maintaining eye contact instead of constantly looking around for someone more interesting to talk to. Things moved pretty quickly between us. By our 1 year anniversary, we were living together in a cute little place we could barely afford, not perfect timing financially. But the rent in this city is ridiculous no matter when you move. So, our relationship wasn't perfect, but it felt solid. We had similar goals: eventually buy a house, travel a bit, maybe kids someday. Daniel was always more concerned with appearances than I was. He cared about what car we drove, which restaurants we were seen at, posting the perfect pics on Instagram. I should have paid more attention to that red flag. But hindsight is 2020, isn't it? Anyway, about 4 months ago, I'd been fee-marking off nauseous in the mornings, exhausted all the time. I took a pregnancy test, mostly to rule it out. We were careful, but not that careful, and 2 pink lines. I still remember sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at that little plastic stick like it was written in hieroglyphics. I spent about a week processing before telling anyone. My best friend Olivia was first. She brought wine to our girls' night, and when I stuck to water, she knew immediately. She asked all the right questions about what I wanted, how Daniel might react, practical things like insurance and maternity leave. It helped me organize my thoughts. As for Daniel, I decided to wait. My birthday was coming up in 3 weeks, and it seemed like perfect timing. We'd already planned a small party at our apartment with our closest friends, and I thought it would be special to share the news with everyone I love at once. Again, hindsight, what a witch. The weeks leading up to my birthday were strange. I was dealing with morning sickness, which should really be called all-day sickness, BTW, and trying to hide it from Daniel. He didn't notice, which I attributed to him being busy. He'd been coming home later, spending more time on his phone, being a little distant. I figured he was stressed about something at work. My birthday fell on a Saturday. I spent the morning setting up while Daniel went to pick up the cake, which took him nearly 3 hours, but whatever. Our friends started arriving around 6 p.m. Olivia and her husband, our friends Liam and Marco, my cousin Stella, who was visiting, and a few others, including Marie, who I'd known since college. The party was going well, good food, plenty of drinks, sparkling water disguised as vodka soda for me, music, laughter. I'd planned to make my announcement after cake, and I kept catching Olivia's eye across the room. She'd give me these little encouraging nods that made my stomach flip with nervous excitement. Around 9 p.m., Daniel clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. My heart practically stopped. Had he somehow found out? Was he going to steal my thunder? He made this whole speech about how special I was, how lucky he felt to have me in his life, all while looking me directly in the eyes. Then he handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box with a silk ribbon. The room went quiet. Everyone was watching, some with phones out, ready to capture the moment. I remember thinking it might be an engagement ring and having this split second of panic about whether I should still announce the pregnancy if he proposed. Then I opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring, it was a folded piece of paper. I opened it, confused, and read the words that are basically burned into my brain now. "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better. Your stuff will be packed by Monday." I looked up at him, sure this was some kind of horrible joke, but his expression had completely changed, cold, distant, almost amused. Then he said loud enough for everyone to hear that we were done, that it had been fun, but he'd outgrown me. And then he laughed, like actually laughed. A few people in the room laughed too, clearly thinking this was some kind of prank we'd planned. But then Daniel turned and walked out the front door without another word. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, note in hand, pregnancy announcement dying in my throat, while our friends looked between me and the door, waiting for someone to yell, "Just kidding!" But nobody did. Olivia was the first to move, She crossed the room and took the note from my hand, read it, and muttered that he was an absolute bastard. Then everyone started talking at once, confusion, concern, outrage on my behalf. And me? I just smiled. Not because I wasn't devastated, I was. Not because I wasn't humiliated, I absolutely was. But because in that moment, I realized something crucial. Daniel had no idea what was coming. He thought he held all the cards. He thought he'd orchestrated this perfect exit, this public execution of our relationship, where he got to be the powerful one. But he didn't know I was pregnant with his child. He didn't know that I'd found his secret credit card statements 2 weeks earlier when I was looking for a stamp in his desk drawer. He didn't know that I'd already seen the texts on his Apple Watch when he was in the shower. He really should have set up two-factor authentication, LEL. And most importantly, he didn't know that I'm not the kind of woman who falls apart when pushed. I'm the kind who gets strategic. So I smiled. I thanked everyone for coming. I assured them I was okay, I wasn't, and that they didn't need to worry about me, they did. I even cut the birthday cake Olivia had brought and passed out slices as if celebrating the end of something rather than mourning it. Marie left almost immediately, claiming she felt sick. Interesting timing, right? Don't worry, we'll get to her. The others stayed, helping me clean up and offering places to stay, shoulders to cry on, alibis for murder. Kidding, mostly. By midnight, everyone was gone except Olivia, who insisted on sleeping on my couch despite my protests. Once we were alone, I finally broke down. The pregnancy, the betrayal, the humiliation, it all came crashing down at once. Olivia just held me and let me sob, not trying to fix anything with empty reassurances or those annoying, everything happens for a reason platitudes people love to throw around when they don't know what else to say. When I finally calmed down, somewhere around 2 a.m., I told Olivia about the pregnancy. She wasn't even surprised, said she'd suspected from how I'd been acting lately. Then I showed her the credit card statements with hotel charges, expensive restaurants, and jewelry purchases that had mysteriously never made their way to me. I scrolled through the screenshots I'd taken of texts to M with heart emojis and plans to meet when I was working late. We both knew exactly who M was, especially after Marie's hasty exit from the party. We stayed up talking until dawn, weighing options, making plans. Olivia asked about telling Daniel about the baby, but I was firm he'd find out eventually, but on my terms, when I was ready, not a moment before. As for his affair with Marie and the financial lies, I wasn't going to sink to his level with petty revenge, but I would make sure the truth came out, all of it. Olivia looked at me with this mix of concern and admiration as I laid out my thoughts. She commented that I could be scary sometimes when I got that determined look in my eye. I just laughed, a real laugh, the first one since opening that horrible box. That night, as I lay in bed alone for the first time in years, one hand resting on my still flat stomach, I made two promises. One to my unborn child, that I would provide a stable, loving home no matter what. And one to myself, that I would emerge from this stronger than before. Daniel thought he was writing the end of our story with that cruel note. And if there's one thing I've learned from all those true crime podcasts I listen to while doing laundry, it's that the best revenge requires patience, planning, and a clear head, all three of which I had in abundance. Next time, I'll tell you what happened in the days and weeks after, including how I confirmed exactly who he left me for. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a surprise. And the first signs that his grand exit strategy wasn't working out quite as planned. First update. So, where did I leave off? Right, the birthday party from hell. Daniel had just walked out after publicly humiliating me, leaving me shell-shocked with a pregnancy I hadn't told anyone about except Olivia. Let me pick up from the aftermath. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and pancakes. Olivia was still there, bless her, acting like nothing had happened while simultaneously checking on me every 5 minutes. She kept insisting I eat something, obviously concerned about the baby. I managed a few bites before the nausea kicked in. Morning sickness is such a joy. Daniel didn't come back that Sunday, which was both a armarkef and torture. I spent most of the day alternating between numbness, rage, and this weird detached sense of planning. I made lists, so many lists. Financial stuff I needed to sort out, doctor appointments to schedule, people to inform. It was like my brain went into survival mode, focusing on practicality to avoid confronting the emotional hurricane. Olivia helped me pack up some of Daniel's things, not everything, just enough to make it clear I wasn't planning on him coming back. The whole time, my phone was blowing up with messages from our friends. Most were supportive, confused, wondering if I was okay. A few were from mutual acquaintances who seemed more interested in gossip than my well-being. And noticeably absent from the concerned chorus? Marie. Remember her from the party, the one who suddenly felt sick and left? Yeah. Monday morning arrived, and with it, reality. I called in sick to work, something I never do. I also made an appointment with my doctor to confirm the pregnancy and discuss options. Around noon, while I was researching tenant rights since the apartment lease had both our names, I got a text from Daniel. I'll be by at 7 to get my things. Make sure you're not there. The audacity, right? I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes before responding with a simple, no. Just that. No explanation, no alternative suggestion, just a firm boundary. He immediately called, and I immediately declined. Then I called Olivia, who rallied the troops. By 6:30, my apartment was filled with friends, Liam, Marco, Stella, who extended her visit, and a couple of others, a protective barrier of people who loved me. Daniel showed up at 7 on the dot, and his face when he saw the welcoming committee? Priceless. He tried to act tough, demanded to know what was going on. But Liam, who's like 6'4" and built like a brick wall, just handed him one suitcase with some clothes and essentials. Liam told him firmly that the rest of his stuff would be available when he arranged a proper time and showed some basic human decency. For now, this was all he was getting. Daniel tried to catch my eye, where I sat on the couch, demarcately calm. He started saying something about how this was ridiculous and to just let him get his things. I finally spoke directly to him, telling him he should consider himself lucky I hadn't changed the locks yet, and we could discuss the rest of his belongings once I'd had time to process his lovely birthday surprise. He started to argue, but something in my expression must have warned him off. He took the suitcase and left, but not before muttering something about me always needing an audience. Rich, coming from the man who dumped me in front of all our friends, don't you think? After he left, I cried again, not for him, but for the future. I thought we'd have, for the plans that now needed rewriting, for the child who deserved better than a father who could be so cruel. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had the locks changed. Now, about Marie. I had my suspicions from the moment she bolted from the party, but I needed confirmation. It came from an unexpected source. Marco texted me Tuesday evening to let me know that Daniel and Marie had been seeing each other. He and Liam had spotted them together 2 months ago, but couldn't be sure it wasn't innocent. He apologized for not telling me sooner. It was like being punched in the stomach, and simultaneously, fee-marking vindicated. I'd known Daniel was cheating, I just hadn't known with whom. Finding out it was Marie, someone who had been in my home, eaten my food, accepted my friendship, that was a special kind of betrayal. Instead of confronting either of them, I decided to wait, watch, gather information. Maybe I've been listening to too many true crime podcasts, but patience really is key in these situations. Over the next week, I focused on practical matters. I officially confirmed my pregnancy 10 weeks along. I spoke with a lawyer about the apartment lease and division of assets. Thankfully, we weren't married, so no divorce drama. I froze our joint credit card and opened a new bank account in just my name basic protection stuff. What I didn't do was tell anyone except Olivia about the pregnancy not yet. It wasn't denial, it was strategy. I needed to get my ducks in a row first. 2 weeks after the birthday disaster, Daniel texted again, asking to talk things through and collect more of his belongings. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near our apartment public place, daytime, on my terms. He looked terrible, which gave me a little jolt of satisfaction. I'm not proud of unshaven, circles under his eyes, wearing a wrinkled shirt. He launched immediately into what I can only describe as a half-ass explanation. He'd been unhappy for a while, felt trapped, thought a clean break would be easier for everyone. I let him ramble for a while before I simply asked if Marie was making him happy. The look on his face? Priceless. Pure deer in headlights shock. He stumbled through denials that were so transparent I almost laughed. I cut him off and told him I knew about Marie, about the hotel charges on his secret credit card, about the jewelry he bought her with money we supposedly needed for rent. I asked him to just be honest for once. He deflated like a punctured balloon. He tried the "it's not what you think" line, but I cut him off again. I told him what mattered now was that he could collect the rest of his things that Saturday at 2 p.m. Liam would be there to supervise. And after that, I didn't want to hear from him unless it was through my lawyer. His voice actually squeaked when he repeated, "Lawyer?" He insisted we didn't need lawyers and could work things out ourselves. I stayed calm even as my heart raced. I told him we were past that point, that he'd made his choice very clear at my birthday party, and I was just respecting it. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist not hard, but desperately. He asked about the apartment, specifically how I was going to afford it alone, saying my job barely covered half the rent. And that's when things clicked into place, the real reason for his concern, for this meeting. It wasn't about closure or collecting his things, it was about money. See, what Daniel didn't know, or conveniently forgot, is that I'd been covering more than half the rent for the past year. His income had been drying up, his position more precarious than he admitted. He'd been living beyond his means, using my steady income as a safety net while presenting himself as the primary provider to our friends and apparently to Marie. I smiled sweetly and told him I'd manage, adding that, unlike some people, I actually save money instead of spending it on hotel rooms and jewelry. The color drained from his face. He knew I knew everything. I walked out of that coffee shop fee-marking lighter than I had in weeks. Not because I'd won some relationship battle, but because I finally saw Daniel clearly for who he was. A man who cared more about appearances than substance, who lied to make himself seem more successful than he was, who abandoned me when I no longer served his narrative. Saturday came, and as arranged, Liam supervised while Daniel collected more of his stuff. I made myself scarce, spending the day at a prenatal yoga class. Highly recommend for anyone dealing with stress during pregnancy, by the way. When I returned, the apartment felt emptier, but somehow more mine. I started rearranging furniture that evening, reclaiming the space. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine: work, doctor appointments, prenatal vitamins, careful budgeting. I wasn't just surviving. I was planning for a future that looked different, but not necessarily worse than what I'd envisioned before. As for Daniel and Marie, well, their romance wasn't exactly thriving. Through the grapevine, okay, through Marco, who heard from his cousin, who works at the restaurant, where they frequently argued in public, I learned that Marie was growing increasingly unhappy with her prize. Apparently, Daniel had painted himself as much more financially stable than he actually was. Big surprise, right? The first real crack appeared about a month after our coffee shop meeting. I was at the grocery store, carefully comparing prices on prenatal vitamins, when I literally bumped carts with Marie. She looked startled, then guilty, then defiant in rapid succession. She greeted me awkwardly, saying I looked good. I replied that she looked tired, and she genuinely did. She had that same stressed expression Daniel had worn at the coffee shop. An awkward silence stretched between us until she blurted out that Daniel had told her we were separated already when they started seeing each other. According to her, he'd claimed we were basically done just living together until the lease ended. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She stumbled through what might have been an attempt at justification, or maybe an apology, saying she wouldn't have gotten involved if she'd known we were still together. I finally told her it didn't matter now that she had him and should enjoy it. As I turned to leave, she called after me, saying he wasn't what she thought, that he promised things he couldn't demark for. I looked back at her, this woman I'd once considered a friend, now diminished by her own choices. I simply told her that sounded like a personal problem that I couldn't help her with. About 6 weeks after the birthday party, I started showing just a little bump, but unmistakable to anyone looking closely. I decided it was time to be more open about the pregnancy. I told my boss first, who was amazingly supportive, offering flexible hours for my third trimester. Then I gradually told other friends and family. Word travels fast in social circles. I knew it would eventually reach Daniel, But I wasn't hiding anymore. This baby was happening, with or without his involvement. 7 weeks post-breakup, as my pregnancy hit the 17-week mark, I received a series of increasingly frantic texts from Daniel. Is it true? Are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? We need to talk immediately. Answer your phone, Lily. This involves me too. I didn't respond to any of them, not out of spite, but because I truly didn't know what to say yet. I needed to process this new phase, to decide what role, if any, I wanted him to have in our child's life. The texts continued, growing more desperate. I have rights, you know. You can't keep my child from me. Call me back or I'm coming over. That last one prompted me to finally respond. I told him not to come to my apartment uninvited, that I would call the police if necessary, and that I would contact him when I'm ready to discuss this civilly. He backed off for exactly 2 days. Then, as the title of my original post foreshadowed, he showed up. It was just after 11 p.m. I was in bed, reading a pregnancy book and making notes when I heard a car door slamming, then footsteps on the path to my door, then pounding, not knocking, pounding. And Daniel's voice, slurred but unmistakable. Lily, open the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk about our baby. For a moment, I just sat there, heart racing, unsure what to do. Call the police? Call Liam? Hide and hope he goes away? Then I heard something that made the decision for me. Crying. Daniel was outside my door, drunk and crying, alternating between demands and pleas. He was saying he'd made a mistake, asking me to let him in, insisting that it was his baby too. And despite everything he'd done, some small part of me felt not sympathy exactly, but recognition. The realization that his grand exit strategy, his new life with Marie, his escape from useless me, none of it was working out as planned. Reality had finally caught up with Daniel, and it had the face of an unexpected baby and financial instability. I got out of bed, put on a robe, and approached the door cautiously. I didn't open it, but I spoke through it, telling Daniel he was drunk and should go home, that we could talk tomorrow when he was sober. He shouted that he needed to see me, now needed to see if it was true, if we were really having a baby. I confirmed through the closed door that yes, I was pregnant 18 weeks now, and yes, it was his. But this wasn't the way to discuss it, and he needed to go home. There was a thud against the door, his forehead or fist, I couldn't tell. He mumbled so quietly, I almost missed it that Marie had left him. She said he wasn't who she thought, that he'd lied about everything. I couldn't help commenting that sounded familiar. He laughed, a hollow sound with no humor. He admitted he'd messed up badly and begged me to let him in, saying he just wanted to talk. I took a deep breath, one hand resting protectively on my small bump. I refused to let him in tonight, but offered to meet him tomorrow at the cafe on Main Street at 10 a.m. I made it clear that if he wasn't there on time, or if he showed up drunk again, that was it, no more chances. He was quiet for so long, I thought he might have passed out. Then, softly, he agreed. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. He promised he'd be there. I heard him walk away, his footsteps uneven. A car engine started, not his, thankfully. He'd called a ride. At least he'd done one responsible thing. As I climbed back into bed, my phone lit up with a text from him. I'm sorry for everything, for the party, for the note, for tonight. I'll make it right somehow. I didn't respond. Words were easy. Daniel had always been good with words, but I needed actions now, especially with a baby on the way. Did I still love him? No. That died the moment he humiliated me in front of our friends. Did I hate him? Not anymore. Hate requires energy I needed for other things. I would meet him tomorrow. I would listen. I would set boundaries. And I would decide not based on his needs or wants, but on what was best for me and my child. Second update. Well, I promised to meet him at that cafe the next morning, and TBH, I half expected him not to show. But there he was, at 9:55 a.m. Looking like absolute trash, and I mean that in the most objective way possible. Bloodshot eyes, same clothes as the night before, and this nervous energy that made him keep jiggling his leg under the table. The table was literally shaking. The first thing I noticed was he'd already ordered me a decaf latte, which okay, thoughtful, I guess. Except I've switched to herbal tea since getting pregnant because coffee makes me nauseous now. Small detail, but it kind of summed up everything about Daniel, making assumptions about what I need without actually paying attention. Anyway, that meeting was a lot. He started with apologies. Lots of apologies. Sorry for the birthday humiliation. Sorry for cheating. Sorry for the financial lies. Sorry for showing up drunk. It was like watching someone frantically check boxes on a "yeah, I messed up" form. I just sipped my tea, ordered to replace the unwanted latte, and let him talk himself out. There's something weirdly empowering about staying silent when someone expects you to respond, you know? When he finally ran out of steam, I asked the only question that mattered. What exactly did he want? He seemed thrown by the directness, started rambling about wanting to be involved and do the right thing. And maybe we could try again. I actually laughed at that last part, not meanly, just genuinely surprised that he thought reconciliation was on the table. The conversation got real when I laid out how things would work going forward. I told him I'd already consulted a lawyer about child support and custody arrangements. His face when I mentioned the lawyer again, LOL. It was like watching someone realize they're actually in the deep end of the pool when they thought they were just dipping their toes. I explained that I wasn't keeping him from his child, but that trust had to be rebuilt from the ground up. That meant scheduled visits, financial responsibility, and consistently showing up not just when it's convenient or Instagram-worthy. He kept trying to steer the conversation toward us as a couple, and I kept steering it back to us as co-parents. Eventually, he got frustrated, saying I was being cold and calculated. I pointed out that cold and calculated is exactly what his birthday note had been. The difference was, I was being cold and calculated to protect our child, while he'd done it to protect his ego. That shut him up. Before I left, I handed him a folder containing info on the baby ultrasound pics, due date, doctor details, along with what my lawyer had drafted regarding child support. Told him to review it, consult his own lawyer if needed, and let me know his thoughts once he'd had time to process. As I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist again. Seriously, what is it with the wrist grabbing? And asked if Marie knew about the baby. I told him that wasn't my information to share, but that I hadn't gone out of my way to tell her. Then I gently but firmly removed his hand and walked out. Over the next few weeks, things got calmer. I focused on setting up the nursery, which basically meant converting half of my bedroom into Baby Central. Crib from IKEA that took me and Olivia 3 hours to assemble. Those instructions should come with a translator. I swear. Changing table from a secondhand store, and this adorable mobile with little stars that my mom sent. I'd been putting money aside aggressively, picking up some extra work editing social media content on weekends. Nothing glamorous, but it helped bridge the gap Daniel's absence had left. My mom also sent some money to help, which was both touching and slightly uncomfortable. I've always been independent, you know? Meanwhile, Daniel was processing. He'd text occasionally, asking about the baby, or requesting pictures of the nursery progress. I'd respond factually, but keep emotional distance. Sometimes he'd try to veer into personal territory, asking if I was seeing anyone. Nope. Or mentioning some show we used to watch together. I gently redirected. Then came the incident. Yes, it deserves capital letters. I was at Target on a Saturday afternoon, loading up on diapers. You can never have too many, according to every mom blog ever, when I literally bumped carts with Marie. Again. What are the odds? This time was different, though. She wasn't awkward or defensive. She actually seemed markiv to see me. She immediately asked how I was fee marking, how the pregnancy was going, all while looking genuinely interested. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. She apologized. Not a rushed, uncomfortable, sorry, not sorry, but a real, thoughtful apology acknowledging the pain she'd caused. She explained that Daniel had sold her the same story he'd apparently fed multiple women, that we were basically over, just going through the motions, that I was holding him back from his true potential. She found out he'd been seeing another woman while dating her. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. We ended up getting coffee, tea for me, and having this surreal conversation about the man. We both now saw clearly for who he was, not a monster, just a deeply insecure person who needed constant validation and was willing to lie to get it. As we were saying goodbye, Marie mentioned casually that Daniel had been let go from his job 2 weeks earlier. She thought I should know, since it might affect child support. I thanked her for the info and headed home, processing this new development. I wasn't happy about Daniel's job loss, it complicated things, but I appreciated knowing. That evening, as I was folding tiny onesies and listening to my favorite podcast, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole, always check the peephole, folks, and saw Daniel standing there sober this time, but looking rough. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He started talking immediately, asking if I'd heard about his job, saying it wasn't his fault, that he was being set up. Then he asked if I'd seen Marie recently, sounding suspicious. I told him yes, we'd run into each other at Target. His face did this weird thing where it tried to look casual, but just looked constipated instead. He asked what we talked about, and I simply said, "You, mostly." He did not like that answer, lol. Then he started getting agitated, saying we were probably conspiring against him, that everyone was turning on him when he was just trying to do his best in a difficult situation. I reminded him that he created this situation with the choices he made, and that playing the victim wasn't going to work with me. That's when he broke down. Not dramatically, not movie-style tears, just crumpled. Said his life was falling apart. No job, no girlfriend, an apartment he could barely afford, and a baby on the way he wasn't prepared for. For a brief moment, I felt that old urge to comfort him, to fix things. But then I remembered the cold words in that birthday note. "You're useless. I deserve better." Instead of comfort, I offered clarity. I told him he had two paths forward: continue the pity party and lose everything, or step up, take responsibility, and rebuild. For the first time since this whole mess started, Daniel really listened, no interruptions, no excuses, just listening. When I finished, he nodded slowly and asked if we could talk inside. I hesitated, then agreed, but left the door open. Never fully close yourself in with someone unstable. We sat at my kitchen table, and he asked thoughtful questions about the baby for the first time. Not surface-level stuff, but real questions about health, development, plans for Mark Vary. As we talked, I realized something important. I no longer felt anything romantic for Daniel. But I did want him to be okay, not for his sake, but for our child's. Before he left, he promised to review the child support agreement and find a new job ASAP. He also, surprisingly, thanked me for not hating him when I had every right to. I told him hate takes too much energy, and I was saving my energy for more important things now. The next few weeks brought subtle changes. Daniel found a new job paying less, but steadier. He signed the child support agreement without argument. He even enrolled in a parenting class at the community center. As my due date approaches, things feel not perfect, but functional. Daniel and I have established a cautious co-parenting relationship built on clear boundaries and expectations. He comes to doctor appointments when invited. He helped assemble the crib when I finally admitted defeat with those ridiculous IKEA instructions. Last week, at 7 months pregnant, I received a package from him. Inside was a journal not expensive, just simple and practical, with a note that said, "For your thoughts, plans, and all the true crime podcast notes you want to write. You are never useless. I was just too self-absorbed to see your value." I didn't respond. Some things don't need acknowledgement. But I did start using the journal mostly to document this journey so I can someday tell our child the complicated, messy, very human story of how they came to be. Next time, I'll update you on the birth, coming soon, and how Daniel handled the reality of actually becoming a father. Because if there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that people can surprise you. Sometimes with their cruelty, sometimes with their growth, but always with their humanity. Last update. A lot has happened, and I've been meaning to post, but having a newborn doesn't exactly leave you with tons of free time or functioning brain cells. So the baby is here. Little Julie arrived 6 weeks ago, weighing 7 pounds and 4 oz, with a full head of dark hair and her father's chin, the only feature of his I'm not mad about her inheriting, TBH. Julie was born. Labor was, well, let's just say all those YouTube birth vlogs I binged did not prepare me for the reality. 32 hours, people. 32 hours. The funny thing is, during those endless hours of contractions, I kept thinking about how much I'd changed since that birthday party from hell 8 months ago. I was a woman standing in shock with a breakup note in my hand. Now I was bringing a whole human into the world. Life comes at you fast, doesn't it? Daniel was actually at the hospital for the birth, which surprised pretty much everyone, including me. He showed up with this massive teddy bear that literally wouldn't fit through the door of my hospital room. Seriously, where did he think we were going to put that thing? In my one-bedroom apartment? But he stayed, through the waiting, through my not-so-ladylike screaming, through it all. Olivia was my rock, though. When things got intense, and I was convinced I couldn't do it anymore, she was right there reminding me that I was already doing it. Daniel mostly hovered awkwardly in the corner, scrolling through his phone and occasionally asking if I needed anything. Which, at least he was trying. When Julie finally arrived and they placed her on my chest, I had this moment of pure clarity. Everything we go through, all the heartbreak, betrayal, uncertainty, it all led to her. And I wouldn't change a single step of the journey. Daniel cried when he held her. Not movie star tears, but this awkward, trying not to, but can't help it kind of crying that made his nose run and his face blotchy. It was the most genuine emotion I'd seen from him in our entire relationship. The first few weeks at home were a blur of diaper changes, feeding struggles, and sleep deprivation unlike anything I've ever experienced. My mom came to stay for 2 weeks, which was both a blessing and a challenge. She kept reorganizing my kitchen cabinets because apparently my system makes no sense. But seriously, who puts colanders with the pots instead of with the strainers? That's just chaos. Daniel has been surprisingly present. Not in a live-in father way, but he comes by 3 times a week for scheduled visits. Sometimes he brings useful things like diapers or takeout. Other times, he brings ridiculous baby clothes that are completely impractical but admittedly cute. Last week, it was a tiny leather jacket. For a 6-week-old, I didn't have the heart to tell him she'll outgrow it before the weather's even cool enough to wear it. Our co-parenting relationship is still evolving. We have moments of tension, especially when he shows up late or cancels last minute because of work stuff. But we also have moments where it feels almost normal. Like when he noticed I was struggling with a clogged milk duct and actually researched remedies, then showed up with cabbage leaves and a heating pad. If you know, you know. Financially, things have settled into a workable routine. Daniel pays his child support on time so far, and I've been able to work from home part-time doing social media management. Not getting rich, but paying the bills. My landlord actually let me renew the lease in just my name, without any drama, which felt like a small victory. The apartment feels completely different now. Daniel's stuff is gone, replaced by baby gear that somehow takes up twice the space. I repainted the living room this soft sage green that makes me happy every time I see it. It's amazing how much your surroundings affect your mood, you know? Marie and I still run into each other occasionally. Our city isn't that big, it's less awkward. Now, more like running into a distant acquaintance than someone who blew up your life. Last time, she was with some bearded guy who kept calling her babe every 3 seconds. She seemed happy if a little forced about it. I genuinely hope she is. As for Daniel, he's still struggling in some ways. His new job isn't going great according to Olivia, who heard from Aaron, who plays basketball with Daniel's coworker. Gotta love small city gossip networks. He moved into this depressing studio apartment that he's constantly complaining about. Sometimes, when he comes to see Julie, I catch him looking around my place with this expression that's hard to read: nostalgia, mixed with regret, maybe? The weirdest development has been Daniel's apparent personal growth journey. He mentioned he's been seeing a therapist, which, wow, this is the guy who once told me therapy was just paying someone to listen to you whine. And he's been reading parenting books and even joined some dad group on Facebook. Sometimes I wonder if aliens abducted the real Daniel and left this pod person in his place. Anyway, my own life has taken some unexpected turns too. Remember how I mentioned working part-time from home? That actually came through a connection from Marco, who recommended me to his sister's company. The work is interesting, the people are nice, and most importantly, I can do it while Julie naps. When she actually decides napping is on her agenda, that is. And then there's Mark. Yes, there's a Mark now. He's the D-Mark very guy who kept bringing my grocery orders during those first chaotic weeks postpartum. At first, I barely registered him beyond thank you and please put the bags by the door, because hello new mom zombie mode. But he started adding little notes to my D-Mark varies, recommending items other parents had found helpful, or sometimes just a dad joke that would make me snort laugh. One day, when I was particularly frazzled, hadn't showered in 3 days, pretty sure there was spit up in my hair, he dropped off my order and asked if I wanted him to help carry the cases of water to my kitchen. I hesitated, strange man in my apartment and all that, but something about him felt safe. As he helped put away the groceries, we started talking. Turns out, he's finishing his degree in environmental science, de-marking groceries to pay the bills. He has a younger sister with 2 kids that he helps with regularly, which explains why he didn't run screaming from my disaster zone of an apartment. We exchanged numbers in case there were any issues with future D-Mark varies. We both knew that was BS, but it was a comfortable fiction. We've been texting, and he's come by for coffee a few times. It's nothing serious. I'm in no rush to dive into another relationship. But it's nice to talk to an adult who doesn't want to discuss diaper brands or sleep training methods. Last week, when Daniel came for his visit, Mark was just leaving. The look on Daniel's face was complicated. Later, he casually asked who that guy was. I kept it vague, partly because there's not much to tell yet, and partly because it's not really his business. He made a few comments about moving on fast before seeming to catch himself and backing off. Olivia thinks I should go for it with Mark, but I'm taking it day by day. After everything that's happened, I've learned that rushing into things never ends well. Besides, Julie is my priority right now. Dating as a single mom is a whole different ballgame, and I'm still learning the rules. Speaking of Olivia, she's been my constant through all of this. When I'm overwhelmed and convinced I'm failing at motherhood, she brings over iced coffee. My first love, finally back in my life now that breastfeeding is going better, and reminds me that all new parents feel this way. She takes Julie for a few hours sometimes so I can shower, nap, or just stare at a wall in blessed silence. Yesterday was actually my birthday 1 year since the box that changed everything. Instead of dwelling on that memory, I had a small gathering at my place. Olivia and her husband, Aaron and Marco, my cousin Moana, and a few other close friends. Daniel stopped by briefly to drop off a gift, a surprisingly thoughtful bracelet with Julie's birthstone, but didn't stay. As I looked around at my little apartment, filled with people who truly care about me, at my daughter sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, at the life I've built from the ashes of what I thought I wanted, I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Mark will become something meaningful, or maybe he'll just be a brief, kind chapter in this story. Maybe Daniel will continue growing into a decent co-parent, or maybe he'll revert to old patterns. Maybe I'll stay in this apartment forever, or maybe I'll eventually find a house with a yard for Julie to play in. What I do know is that I'm not the same woman who stood holding that note on her birthday last year. That woman was shattered, but determined. This woman is rebuilt, stronger at the broken places. So I guess if there's any moral to this long, messy story, it's that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best version of yourself. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. P.S. If you're wondering what happened to that giant teddy bear Daniel brought to the hospital, it's currently serving as a barricade to keep Julie from rolling off my bed when I need to put her down for 2 seconds to pee. So I guess it found its purpose after all. For those asking what happened to the infamous breakup note, I kept it. It's in a memory box in Julie's closet, along with her hospital bracelet, first lock of hair, and the positive pregnancy test. Someday, when she's old enough, we'll tell her the whole story, not to burden her, but because it's part of her history too.